All right, everybody, welcome to Unscripted One-on-One. And I think tonight is probably going to be one of the more informative guests that I've ever had on the show. So let me go ahead and let him introduce himself, and we will go from there.
All right. Well, my name is Scott Zerkle. I'm the owner of College Funding Solutions of Ohio. We specialize in helping families get into and pay for the colleges that best fit their personal circumstances without disrupting their other important financial goals like retirement, mostly. And we've been in the business now of doing this for, we'll be our 15th year next year. So really excited about that. We've helped thousands of families in Central Ohio, and the business keeps growing, and it keeps, not in a bad way, but taking away from my other financial planning business that I own as well, because I'm dedicating so much time and having such a great impact on people's lives in this important area. And there seems to be a real void of understanding, as there should be from most people in the financial community, about how to handle this process and how to uniquely treat it a little differently than the typical paradigm that we do other things in. And so it's my great pleasure to be talking to you tonight, Aaron. I'm glad I've gotten to know your family over the last few years, and Unscripted is always difficult for me because I like to plan, as you know,
Yes,
firsthand.
Yes,
so
sir.
to just be going off the cuff is a little tough for me, but I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and we're thrilled to have you on. I was going to kind of tell everybody, and you'll remember this, I'm sure. So Austin is now 20 and a sophomore in college. And so I want to say when Heather and I began dating, I think the question came up, how are we going to pay for college when we have kids? And I'm like, we don't have kids yet. And then it was, now we got this little one, Austin arrives and we have this little one. It was like, how are we going to pay for college? And we were always on separate sides of that coin whenever the conversation came up. So it quickly went away because we were not on the same page. Austin continued to grow up. The question would come up. I'd always defer. Oh, it'll be online by then. Oh, whatever. And Heather was always out ahead of me in terms of planning, as she always is, which is why she does our bills. But she kept the conversation going. And then lo and behold, Austin was in high school. And I think you came to, was it Hilliard Davidson maybe, or the Hilliard schools? Is that right? Somewhere
it could have been. I've been to all three of the Hilliard high schools. So
yeah,
we've done more at Darby than the other two, just because it's central, so we can pull from everybody through the district a little easier at that location. But yeah, one of them for sure.
Well, she came home guns a-blazing that night and was ready to get an appointment on the schedule. And again, I was like, whatever, I'll go. And so we went, and a lot of long sessions in your office to start, but really to hash out where we were. And quite frankly, to be honest, credit to Heather, no credit for me, because we were way behind the eight ball. And so that's why I say tonight, I think will be very educational for folks, because maybe somebody's hearing this and they're where I was at that point, like, well, we'll just figure it out. And thankful for everything that you provided for us. We were able to figure it out, but it wasn't because of my planning. It was because you were able to really guide us to something we probably should have done a long time ago. And so why don't you tell the story of how you got started with what you're doing, maybe the passion that you have for it and those kind of things. And then I've got 3 questions after. So
okay.
I'll let you take it
from
there.
So I'm nervous about the unscripted part, but I'll do my best. So yeah, I mean, the long and short of it is I actually have a background in the law. I went to law school and was a practicing attorney for a couple of years before I decided that that's not what I wanted to do. I'd spent a great deal of my educational life preparing for an outcome that I thought was coming, and then to come to the realization that I spent all of this time and all of this money to go in one direction, and decide that you have God really kind of pushing you in a different direction is a tough thing to come to. So it took me a couple of years to figure out what I wanted to do. But in that period of time, ironically, I suffered from some of my own financial difficulties because of not knowing what to do and the debt that I found myself in from paying for college and graduate school. And so I was naturally drawn to the financial area because I was trying to find my way out of my circumstances. And in so doing, I became a financial advisor, worked for a couple other companies for a while, and then decided to hang a shingle and go out for my own. And a couple years into that, where I was mostly doing the typical investments and retirement planning, I really just still felt this urge that there was something that I needed to do to make me different than all the rest of us that are out there. I mean, any of you driving down the street can tell. You look on either side of the street, about every block, you'll see a financial office somewhere.
Yeah.
So, and I came across a couple of guys that became somewhat mentors to me in this business that were really focusing on college and were really hammering home the importance of how we as a society have been ignoring this, and how it is one of the single largest expenses any family is ever going to come across, especially if they have more than one child. And we're focusing on as a financial industry seems to be just it become less about financial planning and more about investment management. And investment management is great. I like to do that too. Don't get me wrong. But what it was doing is it was people we were finding as a society in the United States. And this is an interesting, unique phenomena to America, is that we were borrowing our way through to getting our kids' education. Yeah. Nowhere else in the world does that. Yeah. And it hit home to me because I had been carrying all this debt before I got into my profession. And so I could personally identify with what my family had gone through. I was actually the first person from my immediate family to ever go to college. Neither one of my parents had college degrees. And I watched the sacrifices and the debt they and I went into to get that taken care of. And then not to even end up in something that was my ultimate field, it hit home with me. Yeah. So I decided, hey, I want to start doing this. So I dipped, like most people do in most things, I dipped my toe in the water a little bit, and I realized, hey, if I'm going to really do this, I'm going to have to commit to making this a focal point of my practice. Yeah. And so I literally went down to the Secretary of State, looked up what names were available, and I opened a second business in my same office, and just hung a second shingle essentially on the other side of the door, and started focusing on it. And now it's 85% of my business probably comes directly from doing the college work. And it's just kind of naturally fed into a natural passion of mine. As I come across more and more and more people, I realize that no matter how much we get our message out there, it's not out there enough. Yeah. And so I sort of jokingly say that most of my competition in Central Ohio that do some of the things that we do, I don't even get offended at when somebody chooses to work with another company, because there's literally not enough of us to go around for the need that there is in the public. So wow. That's sort of how I got into the business. And since I hung that second shingle, I did it for a few years before I actually hung the second shingle. I just operated under one business mast, but then decided it needed to be two separate business entities for both tax and for liability reasons. And it's been now 12 years. Wow. 12 years now since we hung the second shingle. And every year the business two keeps pulling me more and more away from business one, which is a good problem to have, because it's feeding my passion. And I love the fact that we're having such a dramatic impact on families like yours, and that it's also very fulfilling. I got to tell you, like when I get folks like you who are pleased with what we've done for them and are willing to bring me on their blog and let me talk about my business. I mean, it's so personally fulfilling, because very, very rarely do I ever get somebody say, wow, you didn't help me save anything. It just doesn't happen. So I have a lot of satisfied customers, which also leads to a much happier satisfaction with your job as well. So.
Well, and in the days and times that we're in this, it's so rare that you find somebody that really loves what they do. A lot of us are just doing it for a paycheck, to pay for our kids' college and things like that. So to do something so satisfying has got to be great. And I'll tell everybody, and again, I do have you on as a testimony of myself, my family, and where we're headed, and anybody listening probably already knows, but we've got one coming in next year, and then it's a third 2 years behind her. So navigating that is a bit daunting. And when you blink, it's here. And so I always tell you too, one of the things that you did for us right away was spent a lot of time on a whiteboard, and you actually sent us images of the whiteboard when you were done, but really broke down, okay, here's where you are. And look, I'll say this again, unscripted, any guy driving on the road knows this. Maybe most are like me, where there's some pride involved. It's like, hey, these are my finances. I've worked hard. I've tried to provide for my family. So to sit down and have all that up on a whiteboard, it feels a little, I think there was probably days where I was a little edgy, because it was like, hey man, I'm doing everything I can. And you feel almost inadequate because the future is so big. It feels like I don't know how we're going to get there. And I say all that to say that you really did a great job with the whiteboard sessions, with the listening, with the combing through our finances and saying, okay, here's where we're at. We're going to need this, we're going to need that. And it included all the way up to even our retirement. So it's not like when Bryn crosses that stage, hopefully one day, and however many years that is, with her degree, we're left with nothing, but we paid for our kids. I think we've got a plan in place for that. So those are all testimonies on my part about what you do, including you've even lumped in, we left a space in there for HVAC, which went out over the summer. And anyone listening today, this is true story. We had scheduled this last Monday, but I had a little issue, so I wasn't able to make it happen. And then, so we decided to do it today. And yesterday, our refrigerator went out. So, Shots got a quick email this morning to say, hey, refrigerator's out. But again, we planned for this. We didn't want to, but we knew it was coming. And Scott did a really, really good job of helping us anticipate these costs as we went along. Even though we maybe didn't want those, here we are. So, all right. So 3 questions. The first one is, I'm driving down the road listening to this podcast. And again, I don't know if it's 1 or a million, who knows how many people listen. I'm driving down the road. I just had a baby. Where do I start? When's the best time for me to start planning for the future? Or actually, so I'll give you the 3. My kid's junior in high school, or my kid's in middle school, elementary school, or I just had a child. Do you want to start with the oldest, or do you want to start with the youngest and then talk about where we should be with all 3 of those?
Sure. Unfortunately, I'm going to give a very politically correct answer, but it's the right answer. It's not just doing a presidential election year dance around the question. The
Right.
answer is you start now.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how old your kids are. Now, how you start, and what vehicles you use depends on the individual person. In fact, I don't know if this, you're going to reach the blogosphere to the extent where my attorneys and my counsel are going to be watching this someday, but I'm sure if they are right now, they're going like, be careful what you say here. But
right.
The true answer is what you start and what vehicles you're going to use to do whatever stage in life you're at is going to have to marry up both the cash flow that you have, the period of time that you have until your kids would eventually be going off to college. So basically their ages, and of course the risk tolerance that you have for different types of investments. Obviously you can take on a little risk the longer period of time you have, as long as you have the requisite risk tolerance to be able to do those things. But there's no one answer. And one of the things, and we probably even talked about this at one point in our sessions, that there's no one magic pill that everybody should do. It's largely based on your family circumstances. So a lot of times when I tell everybody wants to jump to, hey, what do we put our money in? And I'm always like, that's like the 8th question on the list. You're getting out of order here. You're putting the cart before the horse. As you know, there are certain types of savings and investment vehicles that I have affinities for based on the stages that people are in their lives.
Right.
Based on my experience and how we use them. And I think some of those things are underutilized. And I don't want to say anything, Aaron, about, what you may or may not, I don't want to divulge any of your private stuff, but, what I would say is that's why when I speak to groups, whether I've been invited in by a number of private companies to come and speak, like for sort of HR programs they have on this topic, or whether I go speak at a high school or something else, I try to focus on really 3 areas. And the first and primary thing is, you sit down and develop a plan. You develop a strategy for whatever that is going to look like based on what your family's circumstances are. You just don't jump into throwing money at things. And I think that, too often when you don't have a plan, and I would say the same thing about this too, by the way, if somebody came to me and wanted to start just doing a retirement planning strategy with me, I think it's too easy to say, well, start putting money in your 401k.
Yeah.
Well, how much? How much can you afford to do? What should be the portfolio look like within there? There's a lot of questions that have to be asked. And I think that we've become, as a society, just throw some money into something, and then we're going to turn around however many years later, and it's going to be where we want without any plan or strategy. And that's just not right.
Right.
You'll find that people that do that more often than not do not reach their goals. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's good, right? It's good to save and put money aside and to start doing those things. But if you do it without a strategy, you're not going to be nearly as successful as somebody that goes into it with an absolute plan and goal and strategy to attain over a certain period of time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that really answered your question, but
no, it really did. And I think, no, it's perfect. Because I didn't think about the fact that, this is a little different in that there's probably some things that I always give people the out on other podcasts, because I've had a kid that plays for Minnesota, and I didn't want to ask a question that puts Minnesota in a violation. Or I've had some sensitive topics, or actually the strength coach from Arkansas was on with me. And again, I don't want to put Arkansas in. So if there's something that I've asked you that you say, hey, that's not, come visit the office. So I think that's really probably what we need to say is, for anybody listening to this, that's the best place to start, right? Just make an appointment, sit down and just, start there, but start. That is the biggest thing that I think you said, is start.
Absolutely.
And I think, and for anybody listening, I would, like you said, I don't want to get into the granular detail of it, but the bottom line was you were able to help us with some home financing and actually utilizing the value of our home, which I would have never, ever in a million years done, which was a game changer for us. And again, like you said, everybody's story is different. We were in a place, with our home that we could do that, but to give kind of an overall view, that's one of the things that we did that was a game changer. And it also sets us up for the future as well. So just something that there was no way I would have been able to do that.
Right. And just to clarify there, without divulging any more personal stuff about your situation, I, of course, didn't do that financing. I'm not a bank and I can't give you a loan.
Right.
But I think in your particular instance, what we talked about was the importance of getting into a positive cash flow situation where you were able to set X amount of dollars aside so that you could get college mostly paid for from your earnings, basically. I know we didn't get all the way there, and we don't do that with everybody, but and hopefully you're not offended if I say this, you can cut me off and you can delete and cut things out too as well. But I think in your particular situation, when we got to the bottom line of, hey, whatever we weren't going to have saved up, you were going to borrow, and you were going to borrow it in ways that were very unfriendly to you.
Right.
Then that's when the conversation turns to, hey, we got some equity in the house here. Can we turn this around without going and getting those expensive parent loans and some of those other things? And not to pat myself on the back, but I think we came up with a fairly good strategy for you guys. So.
A great plan. And that's why I have you on. And I want people to hear this. Scott's not sliding me a check for this or anything like that. It's this is true testimony. And again, I don't have a whole lot to hide. At the end of the day, I mean, we don't have to talk actual figures, but I think, so again, I want anybody listening to this to realize, hey, you're not alone. If you're driving down the road or you're listening at your desk or wherever you're hearing this, you're not alone. Don't be afraid. Don't let your pride keep you from going and visiting and just sitting down and having a conversation, just like you and I are right now, because the reality was my plan was to cash in my 401k, I believe was one of those strategies.
That was one of the things you said. I said, let's not leap to that one yet.
Yeah, well, that would have left a lot of money on the table, or not, for somebody else to take. I mean, that was a horrible plan. But again, I want people to hear this because I have a feeling I'm probably not alone in that. You don't really address it till it's too late. And now all of a sudden, now we're in a scramble mode and I got to get my kid into college and get things paid for. That was one of the few ideas I had, which is why we now lean very heavily on Scott. So when my refrigerator dies, I'm not freaking out. We're laughing as we're doing this, but that's the truth. I was as calm as could be yesterday. It's terrible, but it is what it is. And we have a strategy and a plan now that I did not have the day we walked in your office. So
having a plan is the biggest step. It's not, I mean, just carving any plan obviously out of thin air doesn't fix everything.
right.
But you remember my quote, my famous quote from Robert Heinlein that I like, right? The most. We tend to get involved in trivia, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact of the matter is that when we don't have a plan, then we come up with stupid things. Robert Heinlein said, in the absence of clearly defined goals, we become strangely loyal to performing daily acts of trivia.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can trick ourselves into believing that if we just throw some money somewhere, well, hopefully it'll be enough when we get there. It's not working, folks. Don't, I love, Aaron, I love the fact that you're, being humble right now and saying, bringing up, not to worry about this stuff. There's three things I always joke around. When you're in backyard barbecues, you've always been told the two things you shouldn't talk about are politics and religion, right?
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you in my business, I actually think it's three. It's politics, religion, and how you're going to pay for your kids' college. It's the dirty little thing nobody really wants to talk about, because statistics tell us 90% of people in this country that are sending their kids to college are borrowing part of the money to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said you've seen it. So you've done this for 15 years. How much have you seen the cost of college go up over those 15 years? It's got to be astronomical.
Yeah. I mean, the large wave of increase had actually pretty much taken place from the time I went to college in the late 80s. I graduated from college in 1992. I think you and I are the same age, right?
Yep.
So, from about that window to about I started doing this in about 2006, was when you saw the greatest wave. It keeps going up, much greater than the rate of inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be interesting to see what the unintended consequences are that come out of this COVID stuff, because I know I just saw an article, I think it might have been over the weekend, that came out that undergraduate enrollment was down over 20% this fall from last year.
Wow.
Now, is that a blip? Is that people just scared staying home, and it'll go right back to where it was before then next year if we get back to some kind of normalcy, or is this a trend starter?
Yeah.
Honestly, as much as I'm in the college game, and I really don't see myself as being an advocate for a college education. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think having an education is great,
Mm-hmm.
and that the vast majority of people are going to better their lives by having that education. But I don't believe that every person walking the planet has to have a college education to be successful.
Right.
And I think that needs to start being a bigger part of the discussion, that we don't have to go the traditional 4-year college route, in-face learning, because there are many variations and hybrid sort of ways to get a degree to try to save some money. It's not worth bankrupting yourself and giving up your future and your retirement to do so. I think that we have to start having much more honest conversations about the entire thing. Yeah.
And as you were talking, I was thinking about that. You mentioned COVID, and this might be a softball question, or it could be a slider. I'm not sure, but what if somebody's listening to this and thinking, well, COVID's got everything messed up right now. I'm gonna hold off on that planning. Again, you said just start, but if anything is, so you could probably answer that question, is COVID probably even more of an immediate, has it pushed more urgency towards planning in terms of college? Or do you think, are you seeing people are saying, I'm gonna back off the gas a little bit here?
I'm seeing both things. I'm seeing some people who really haven't had their income impacted by much of this yet.
Yeah.
Economically, I think there are still some major economic consequences to all this coming that a large segment of the society has not felt yet,
right.
In their personal income.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's that person that has kept going on just as normal, but they're working from their computer, like we're doing tonight from home,
mm-hmm.
it's given them more free time because they're able to get their work done. And now they want to come in and meet, and they can do it in the middle of the day. They don't have to miss anything. And, so I've got that segment. And then I've got people who have been impacted, who's literally seen their their household cash flow go down dramatically. And they, of course, can't save to the degree they want to, if at all, right now.
Right.
And they've had to pump the brakes.
Yeah.
And that brings up a good point. So whenever you're developing a plan or a strategy, regardless of where your starting point is, built into that has to be the flexibility to adjust when circumstances adjust.
Right. Right.
And I often think that the traditional way of approaching, saving and investing for college neglects that too. It just assumes, they work backwards. Well, if I put this much in and make this much return and do it for 15 years, this is how much I have to save per paycheck. Yeah, assuming nothing ever changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and quite frankly, that's almost never.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people find themselves to be in the exact same circumstances 15 years apart. Just think about what you were doing 15 years ago, and what your income was and what your circumstances are.
Right.
Life changes, and your plan better be able to adjust too.
Yeah. And I think it's a phone call I hope I never, ever, ever have to make. But, we both work, Heather and I both work, and you never know. Again, I'm not saying anything about either one of our employers. We're in a COVID world now. And everybody's reacting. So that's not a phone call I would have to make, or want to make, but it is one that I'm glad I have someone to call should that happen, because again, I think we got to circle the wagons. We have a plan that's in place now, but best laid plans, right? So, right. Your refrigerator dies, HVAC, lose a job, whatever it might be. I'm glad we have a partner and we can come in and sit down. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to do anything about it outside of saying, okay, here's where we're at, and this is probably some of the changes we're going to have to make. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing I don't think that, like I mentioned this before when we were talking on a slightly different topic. I think too often people in our industry, in the financial services industry, financial advisors in particular, really have assumed the role of strictly an investment manager too often.
Yeah.
And it's great. And I understand how the business works for myself too. Getting more assets under management will help me and provide for my retirement. But the problem is that really doesn't mean we're helping people get down and roll up our sleeves. And I'll tell you, even though I don't make as much money doing it, this firsthand. Sometimes rolling up your sleeves in a conference room with a whiteboard, yep, and going through people's budgets and helping them figure out exactly how much they can save without going into a penny of debt, and then helping set up a strategy how to make that accomplished might not make me any more money.
Yeah.
But it's the right thing to do, and it's what most people are really looking for.
Yeah. And,
I have people in my business that, and even friends of mine in the business will say, you're such a sap, you're spending all your time on stuff that doesn't bring in as and I'm like, no, I don't know. At some point your job, I do good. That's not great English, right? But I do good. My wife and I are able to take care of our family, and we live a very blessed life. We're able to give and provide to our ministries that we support and the church that we go to, and we get to focus our energies on our kids. At some point, I guess I'd love to be a multi-million, make tens of millions of dollars a year. Sure. But if at some point what I've got to give up is where I'm really needed in this world, it just doesn't make sense at some point.
Yeah. And again, I echo that because I think, just here's an example. And again, maybe I'm being way too transparent here, but, and again, I'm not going to ask because that's just probably one of those questions that probably shouldn't be asked that your lawyers would be like, hey, no.
I'll tell you if I can't answer it.
Well, we are in an election year. And I think anybody listening to this knows that there's a really good chance the world's going to burn in about 3 or 4 weeks, or at least we're going to see things we've never seen. I think is for those of us that are planners, not even just financially. I have an IRA right now that has done very well the last few years. Not so much the 8 years before that. So knowing that those factors are out there, and I am getting to a point here that hopefully people will listen to.
All right.
I don't have the first clue who to call on that. I know what bank has it. I know, but so my point is that time that you invest in us, that time, the whiteboard time, the rolling up the sleeves time, the phone calls and emails afterwards, I've got a pretty significant savings out there that I don't have the first clue who to call and what to even talk to them about. And you and I could talk about that offline, but my point is, that investment's worth it for us as a family. Even if something as silly as my refrigerator, which I keep bringing up, it's an email and a call to you just to say, hey, this just happened. What's your best advice? Now I've got a pretty large amount out there that I don't even know who to call. You know what I mean? And that's scary. So I think my whole point in that was not to let everybody know about my IRA. It was to let them know that time and that investment that you take, I think, is so critical. I want to have you on here. And I really hope people are hearing that if they're in that market or looking for that kind of, a partnership, I guess you'd call it, or relationship with someone as they're navigating through this. It sounds like not just college, but also other financial, but specifically college for us was, that's really what I hope people hear. So, and again, and you might want to mention this, what are the other services that you provide? It's not just sitting down and whiteboarding out your finances. There's a lot of other things you did for us with Austin.
Yeah. So we offer all kinds of admission strategies that try to minimize the risk of going through this process the wrong way. I partner with a company that provides admission services that include admission application review, essay review. We do ACT and SAT prep work with some of our students. One thing that I know we walked through and did a lot verbally as much as anything else, but a lot of times we do it in writing, is we also help our families appeal and negotiate the best deals at the colleges.
Right.
One thing that I try to make sure to beat into people is, please do not settle. This is going to be one place that I will go no matter the cost. I mean, talk about, think as a consumer as you go through this process. You have to leverage yourself. If the college knows they're the only game in town, lots of times, what's their incentive to give you more money?
Right.
And we did that firsthand, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had a little bit of a unique situation with Austin since he was playing baseball, and you had to make some decisions earlier in the process because of coaches wanting a commitment as to where he was going to play and stuff. But I think we did a pretty good job, working through that, going back and forth with a couple of different options. And, I don't know, maybe you can even be a better testimony about this to the people that listen, to Unscripted. But I think one of the big pieces of free advice I can give people is, do not be all about one college over all the others. You got to have options.
Right. Yeah. And I think, the very first, one of our initial meetings, I know you said, what's the dream school? And of course, anybody listening knows what mine is, which I don't know if Austin had a choice, but his also was the same one, being University of North Carolina. And again, it was like, well, the chances are slim and none, but let's throw it up against the wall. And then there was probably, I don't know, I think we started with 20 different schools when he decided, okay, again, here's another thing that you did that for us. I remember sitting in there in the office and you said, you got to go home and have a tough conversation with your son. And that is, do you want to play baseball? Because if not, and this was your specific quote, if not, this conversation changes. Because if you're looking at schools where he potentially could play baseball, or is there that fit that I've talked about on so many of these podcasts? And if not, then we got to shift gears and look at some other schools, because if it's not about baseball, then it's going to be about some other things. And we did. We came home and had that conversation, and, he said yes, and the rest is history. But again, that was another piece of advice for us, as we got a lot of counsel when we went through recruiting from a lot of places. But that was one from you that was very strong, was you got to ask your kid, does he want to play? And if he does, then he's got to do his part, and you promise him that you'll do yours. So just great stuff. I know we've gone way past the half hour. Are you still good?
I'm still good as long as you want to go. I probably got at least another 15 minutes in me. Not that we want to take that whole window, but
right.
If I fall asleep,
That's right. Well, no, I think, and I just really want to make sure everybody gets any links, phone numbers, anything that you want to get out there, because I have a feeling, and again, I'll put those in the blog post where we share this audio and video as well. But for anybody listening, where can they reach you? What's the best way to reach you? Just anything you want to tell them about you guys.
Yeah, you can go check us out on the web. Our website's www.collegefundingohio.com, all one long word. Our telephone number at our main office, which is 614-889-8043. We're located in Dublin. We're right off of France Road in the Millennium Complex. I've only been in 2 office locations in my entire financial career. Was I still over off of Salisbury when you guys first came?
No,
I
it
was already over
France. Yep.
on France.
Yep.
I moved over to France in 2014, so I couldn't remember. That was probably right after.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in 1 or 2 locations for that whole time, my entire financial career. Let's see, what else did you ask me? I got sidetracked there for a second.
No, that's good. Yeah. Is that all the links and any contact information, things like that? And that's the best place to start, right? Just make a phone call, or is there a
if you want to
contact
shoot
form on there?
Yeah, if you want to shoot us a email, you can shoot us at info@collegefundingohio.com. My executive assistant monitors that all day, every day. So, if you got questions or if you'd like to set up a consultation, reach out to us. We'd love to meet you. Can't promise that we'll end up deciding to work together, but we'd love to figure out if we're a fit. So
yeah, it's great. And then the last question I had, while you just in reference to that, how big is the footprint? If somebody, because I don't know where this reaches, so how big of a footprint do you typically work with?
In this day and age, it's pretty much Ohio at this point. I'm actually licensed in a couple other states as well, but the way reciprocity and some different things go back and forth, like I've been licensed in Florida since before I even started my college business, just because I had so many people that would, people, maybe some older clients and, that lived half the year down there anyway. And I didn't want to lose them if they became permanent residents down there and that sort of thing. So there's a handful of other states that I'm licensed in as well. For the most part, as we focus on the college stuff, we focus on Ohio. If somebody gets this, if you're becoming the star that you should be, Aaron, then
I doubt it.
Somebody is hearing this out in California right now. Even if you reached out to me, if I didn't, couldn't work with you initially, I could point you to somebody in our business in your area that I could. But I've got clients in several different other states because, and the world's learned this year too, right? Hey, guess what? You don't have to do face-to-faces very much anymore.
Right. Absolutely. I was thinking that.
I wouldn't be surprised if we expanded now because of that. I don't have any immediate next month decisions to do that or anything, but I think the world has had its eyes open to the fact, hey, we can do most of this virtually now. We can do electronic signatures, we can do UPS packages when documents need signed and that sort of thing. But with scan, email, and video now, who says I can't talk to somebody in Japan?
Yeah. I mean, we did a lot virtually even before COVID with some of the things that we did, moving around some things. A lot of that stuff, I never even met some of the people. It was just emails and signing and those kind of things. So, well, I appreciate your time. I hope everybody's heard certainly a ton of respect for what you do, how you've helped us and how you're helping others as well. I will get this posted and up, and I hope people call. I hope, if nothing else, they just come in and sit down with you. And it was a humbling for me, again, I think it was a pride issue. I don't like to admit sometimes you need some help, I think, and this isn't, college is not a bootstraps thing. I mean,
if there's a process that you can go through that can make you feel kind of naked, and if you have not saved up what you need to, I'm certainly in one of those areas, and I hope that your experience and anybody else's would be that you would feel that I'm sensitive to that. And but sometimes hard questions have to be asked. And I appreciate you and Heather and the relationship that we've developed. I appreciate you having me on here tonight. It's been my pleasure to get to spend some time with you and to see your shiny head, and see that it's still shinier than mine, even though we're the same age. I just wanted to get that in.
Thank you. Well, there's a reason I don't use the overhead light and I use the front facing, is because there's a lot of shine going on up top and it messes with the whole flow. So and my tools aren't that great here. So
buddy of mine I went to college with, we had sort of receding hairline right here where I do when we were in college. And he used to joke around and we used to talk about they were the power alleys. It's not so funny anymore.
Not so much. No, no, not at all. But luckily, Andre Agassi and Bruce Willis and guys like that really set the way for the rest of us. So it made it
That's
cool,
right.
I guess. So, well, Scott, I'm so thankful for your time, and I hope everybody's learned a lot tonight. I know I continue to learn every time we talk, and I don't mean this in any bad way, but I hope we don't talk a whole lot, at least not about things that break or needs that we currently might have or may in the future have. But always appreciate how quickly you respond. Appreciate that you truly do care about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And honestly, I sleep well at night knowing that box is checked, where a lot of years I did not do that. So, and I would be remiss if I didn't shout out Heather again, and her persistence and her seeing in the head enough, far enough. And I'm glad that you all met and brought us in. So thank you so much. And hopefully everybody got a lot out of this tonight. So
my pleasure. I enjoyed it a great deal. Tell Heather I said hello.
We'll do. We'll see you soon. All right. Well,
All right.
hopefully not too soon. Take care.
I get it.
All right.